Hi there, great to have you with us once again here on Leading Edge. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. This week we are looking ahead beyond controversy, beyond criticism, to the future of child protection in Lucas County. A newly formed citizen task force is stepping in, bringing fresh eyes and new energy, determined to transform children's services so that every child and every family gets the help that they deserve. Members of the task force have joined us here today. We've done stories leading up to this point, but I wanted to give them an opportunity to dive in a little bit further. We have Robin Reese, also Brita Osborne and Suzette Cowell joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time to kind of dive into this a little further. Robin, because you're sitting closest, I'll start with you. As a former director, I wanted to know when you came to the table, when you were brought on, and I said before we came out, this is a task force. You've been tasked with something. Yes. What is your understanding this many weeks in that you guys are doing?
Well, I think a big part for me is community trust. And with everything that has happened, the community kind of lost trust in the agency. And so the task for me is to try to restore that and find out where the breakdown is.
That's a huge concept.
Yes.
I'm sure you guys have talked about that. Okay, so how do we, what's our why? As far as the trust is concerned, lost trust because of not one case, but multiple over the course of many years.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, some of it stems from the fact that child protection, some of the information with child protection is protected. And so what is presented to the public sometimes does not sound genuine because of rules around what you can say and what you cannot say.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out how to get the message across is critical, and that people honestly understand what child protection is and what it is not. And that is huge. Even with the professionals and the community folks that are on the task force, many of them had no idea what child protection is. And of course, Children's Services has been around forever.
Right.
And it's one piece of the bigger picture of child protection.
Brita, as a county agency, I mean, how far can you go? Because there's nothing saying that any of these cases, and you know, we look at so many of them from a media standpoint, but you guys couldn't necessarily have stopped some of these things from happening, or do you look at it that maybe we could have?
Realistically, I think that first and foremost, education is key. There are so many players associated with keeping children safe in our community, and realistically—
Education in what sense? How to be a foster parent, how to be a better person?
I think understanding that we all have a responsibility, and I think that everyone has a vested interest in keeping children safe. Nobody wants to see a child hurt. Unfortunately, people hurt children, and that is why the child protection system was created out of necessity at a certain point. But there are so many players involved in child protection. You know, it's not just Children's Services. You have the court that plays a key piece. There are loads of administrative rules and codes that govern what can be done, what can't be done. And, you know, realistically, and I think you see this with the, you know, public passion when something awful happens, that we do recognize that we all have a responsibility to kind of, you know, we're part of this village. And I think that making sure that people understand how the system works, how they can be involved, whether it's through reporting, through being a foster parent, through helping people before something bad happens.
Let me go back, Suzette, let me go back to the word trust. And what did you define? What has the task force defined as the trust that was broken was blank?
It's a lot of different items. It's not just centered on one. You gotta blame someone.
Yeah.
And Lucas County Children's Services, because with the job that we do, we were the ones. So we're just showing the community that it's more than just Children's Services, you know.
Kind of to Brita's point.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
And while I think education is so important, I think that there also are real systemic changes that can take place through this process. We have an amazing facilitator who's guiding the work and really firming up priorities now, and then we'll move into committees that are tasked.
Is that part of the Casey family programs, or is that something separate?
She was recommended by the Casey family programs. She's amazing. She's incredibly knowledgeable and has worked in the child welfare space and for many years. So I think that it's critical in laying the groundwork for all of the task force members to understand the system as it is, but then also it's really a mixed bag of folks. There's amazing representation from across the community. People who with lived experience, they grew up in a foster home, they aged out of foster care, they've been a foster parent. There's court representation, there's child welfare representation, there are mandated reporters and TPS and school psychologists and foster parents. There's a child abuse pediatrician. I mean, it's really, I think, a
kind of
great
an all hands
group.
on deck kind of a situation.
Definitely.
Stay right there. When we come back, we're going to take our first break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the future LCCS and what that looks like, what the task force sees that looking like. We'll have that. A little bit later on, we're going to talk to Chef J.J. Reinhart, who you see right there. But stay with us. Our task force for Lucas County Children's Services is right after this. Welcome back. They are part of the Child Protection Task Force that was assembled over the last few months after some questions came about as far as Lucas County Children's Services and the path going forward. Robin Reese, also Suzette Cowell, and also Brita Osborne joining us here, part of the task force. I was blown away, I'll tell you. When I started seeing video of the meetings and the players and the different talent, temperaments, and convictions that were in that room all coming together, how do you meld, Robin, I'll start with you, how do you meld all of those minds together to kind of have a central focus? Because everybody's bringing something different to the table.
Absolutely, and coming in, you're absolutely right. Everybody brought something different. They had different feelings about children's services. And honestly, we started with education, trying to educate everybody in the room as to what children's services is, and that child protection is bigger than children's services. Children's services leads the community in protecting children, but that's one piece of it. And getting people to understand that and to understand how interconnected all of the different systems are. I mean, the school system, mental health, the DD system, all of those, and the court, all interconnected.
Let me ask
if
you,
one fails, the whole system fails.
Let me ask you a tough question.
Sure.
Did you see, was the writing on the wall before you left?
It depends on what you mean by writing on the wall.
Was this a long time coming, or was this going to happen at some point as you saw where LCCS was positioned? And obviously, it's a political moment, right? It's a moment for the commissioners to come forth and say, daggone it, we demand change.
So the trust in child protection it's always an issue. There's built-in people that don't like child protection because of what we do. And so trust is something that you have to work on 24/7 in a community when you're responsible for protecting children. And so I don't want to say I saw it coming, but I know that it's something that takes continuous work in the community. You have to be out there. You have to be vigilant about educating people. You got to be present. And people have to know that you care about children in this community. Has the
vetting process come up yet? Has that been talked about as far as the parents that are allowed into the system, where these kids go? Has that been discussed over the last few weeks?
We haven't gotten into that level of detail.
Is that on the table of contents? Can you even say, is that on the menu?
I think a really interesting piece to this.
Or is that a naive question? You talk about education as far as the system is concerned.
Well, sometimes, and Robin kind of educated me on this piece, you may place a child somewhere, it's permanent custody, and then maybe it's a grandparent that is aging, and so the aunt says, well, he can come live with me, or she can come live with me. And now it's a whole different set of circumstances. And the system is completely removed from that. So I think there are so many variables associated with how families function in our community, in every community, that you can't police that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, when a tragedy happens, you don't want to go too far to the other side, because, I mean, what do you want your child protection agency to look like? Do you want to eliminate all relatives? I mean, do you want to, I mean, you see what I'm saying? You can get to the point where, I mean, do you want people kicking in doors, taking kids? Child protection, to some degree, is shaped by the community.
My focus is, I would answer yes to both of your last two questions if there is an issue, right?
Okay.
And then
When you say, okay, when you say issue, what are you talking about?
well, I'm just paraphrasing. I mean, obviously you can get into specifics. If there's abuse, if there's a violent tendency, if there's alcoholism.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
So if you spank your kids, is that something that the community could decide that everybody that spanks their child
Right.
should lose their child?
Right.
Is that how far we want to go?
That's fair. I understand what you're saying, and the gravity of how that discipline is applied.
Absolutely.
I talked going into the break about the future of child protection. Let's talk about that. What does it look like? What have you discussed in this task force that it looks like going forward?
I think really the education is going to be a key component to the community. You know, I was a past foster parent, and I'm telling you, I've learned so much from just going to the meetings. Education helps.
What did you learn that you didn't know?
Just that it was a whole lot of different parties involved. It's not just children's services. You got the courts, you got everyone involved in making decisions.
And as far as the future of LCCS,
Well, the future, child protection has to be supported in the community.
do you guys have to put together a final report? How does this work?
Absolutely. We will put together a final report. We're already seeing some recommendations that are starting to shape. And so, yeah, there will be a final report. In fact, we will start putting out information as we go, but there will be a final report.
And changes could happen over the course of a year, many years?
Hopefully, it'll be ongoing change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, our time is up. We probably could have went a little bit longer with this, but I very much appreciate you guys taking the time, and obviously we are keeping track as these meetings continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And continued good work to you. We'll be right back. Stay with us. When we come back, as we mentioned, we have got with us J.J. Reinhart. Oh, it's a story you have got to hear, from a small town northwest Ohio to working in the islands. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back here on Leading Edge. We have got a story that proves that small town roots are no limit to big dreams. J.J. Reinhart graduated from Fostoria St. Wendelin High School. It no longer exists. But his journey took a wild turn from New York to the Playboy Mansion kitchen, where he served as head chef for Hugh Hefner, feeding A-listers at legendary parties. He is now the force behind Hilton Properties, top properties on Oahu in Hawaii. JJ, you just got off a trip to Rome. You travel the world.
Absolutely.
I have got to let people know, you have got an Emmy.
Yep.
You have got a Tony.
A Tony, yep.
And now you have this story that I'm going to dive into. But first, tell people the Emmy and the Tony, where'd that come from?
So this was actually a show that I was in. So before being a chef, I was a professional trumpet player. So the show was called Blast. You may not know it, but most people know of what stomp is.
Yeah.
So kind of similar to stomp. Stomp is just percussion, but with brass, with blast, we also have brass on the stage.
Okay.
So I was kind of a dancing trumpet player. So through my progression as a trumpet player, it actually started right here in Toledo, Ohio, with a group called the Glassmen, which also no longer exists. But that was what really propelled me to this organization called Blast.
So you go to New York, shows, Broadway, yes?
Yep. I was actually on Broadway and watched 9/11 happen.
How do we get, and that's, I'm sure, an unbelievable experience, personal experience. So how do we absolutely transcend to the West Coast?
Well, with Blast, they actually took us to the West Coast first. We did a run with Disney, but we closed our show there, and they're like, let's go back on the road. I got tired of life on the road. So I decided, well, what else am I good at? What do I like to do? You know, I actually enjoy cooking. Let me give this a whirl. So I started looking at culinary schools. I actually went to the Le Cordon Bleu in Scottsdale, Arizona. And one of the reasons I saw that is as I was interviewing schools, they said, here's a list of places people have gone for internships. I start scanning and I'm like, the Playboy Mansion? Really? They're like, oh yeah, we sent some people there. And I'm like, I like your school and I'm going to go to the Playboy Mansion.
You're how old at this point?
I am 48 years old now.
No. Like when the Playboy Mansion came up.
So I was 24 years old when this happened.
Okay.
So yeah, going through culinary school, I didn't even know how to get in touch with Playboy. It wasn't until my last week of school, I ran to my guidance counselor. I said, I could go here,
Yeah.
but I don't know the contact to Playboy. He's like, funny you should mention it. I talked to the chef last week. So he set up the interview. I went into the Playboy Mansion. It was the day after Thanksgiving, and they put me through some tests, and they actually said to him, like, you know, you're a pretty good kid. We're going to bring you on. When I started there for my internship, I didn't realize I'd be there for 7.5 years.
7.5 years. And what you saw, what you experienced.
I saw nothing. I saw nothing.
We're showing one photo that you shared with us, but I guess from the rubbing elbows with the rich and famous, I mean, was that really the case?
Yeah, it was. It was. You know, with Mr. Hefner, you know, I got to see him on a daily basis, and we were there to serve him. And you know, he was actually very proud of everything we did, and he had one
protective of you.
Very protective of us. And he told us he had one goal for us: make him look good. He didn't care what we made. So it was actually very educational and very important in my career growth to. You know, I put on the blinders, you know, and I really focus on what is on my cutting board.
Yeah.
And I took it upon myself to utilize, you know, the sandbox that Mr. Hefner gave us, and I started to grow, and I started experimenting with different recipes.
I was reading an excerpt from one of the articles that was done about you, and it said you never heard the word no as far as there was a story about getting carrots from someplace, was it in Iowa?
No, it was actually right from here in Ohio, from
okay.
Sandusky, where I would call them up and say, hi, I'm calling from the Playboy Mansion. I heard about your carrots. Can you send them to me? They were FedEx, and they arrived the next day.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of...
So you had some cachet when you were
yeah,
calling
absolutely.
these places.
You know, it was really nice walking around every once in a while, handing that business card out with the nice bunny logo on it.
And you said he was protective. There was one situation in particular you told me about. There was a party, a couple of A-listers. We don't have to mention their names, but I'd love for you to. But you were told they will not be back at these parties because of the way you were treated.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, like I say, Mr. Hefner was very protective of our staff. You know, he set expectations for his guests as well.
Yeah.
And if you misbehaved, you were grounded. You know, he had no problem telling, you know, any A-lister, you're not allowed back here. At one point, I had somebody in my face demanding that I make them this, that, and the other thing, and I just very politely said, you know, per Mr. Hefner, he's offering you this beautiful buffet in the party. And, you know, that's the food offerings that you're going to have this evening. So, yeah, like I said, he always had our back.
Next day, he came to you and the rest of your staff and apologized.
He apologized.
And said that'll never happen again.
Absolutely. He said,
let's jump ahead because our time is short. You get to Hawaii. How did that happen?
So it was actually, you know, I was getting restless because Playboy's private, and for me to validate myself as a chef, I needed to get into public. Well, a chef I happened to work with, you know, early on in my career was opening Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant in Waikiki. He came to Los Angeles, called me up and said, help me out with this event. As we were getting all the food prepared, he's like, yeah, I'm opening this restaurant. And I asked him, what's your staff look like? He's like, oh, I don't have a staff. Are you interested? I said, absolutely. I realized this would be my stepping point into the public eye, but also doing it with a chef, you know, as famous as Chef Morimoto. You know, again, you know, I'm used to working with celebrities, so here's another celebrity that I have to add to my resume.
You are responsible for a number of properties on Oahu, but talk about the intensity of your position, right? Because Hollywood drums it up as far as, yes, chef, this chef, and that kind of thing. Is it like we see on TV?
No, it's definitely not like that. So, you know, as a chef, most of my job is education. Because on my property, I have a team of 120 cooks below me, but I'm also running 13 restaurants at this time on top of banquet service. So I'm constantly going kitchen to kitchen, making sure that, again, our food is consistent. Because when I have one cook on one station, it might be a different cook every single day. I need to make sure they all cook the same.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of education. You know,
and you can see a lot of his videos on YouTube, by the way. I got to ask you, your mother, you just returned from Rome. You took her on a trip to the basilicas and the cathedrals. But I got to ask, when St. Wendell and J.J. Reinhart is going to the Playboy Mansion, what does Mom in this Catholic upbringing say about that?
I think she said a few extra prayers. She may, while we were in Rome, she may have forgiven me for some of that as well. But no, it was very unique because my mom and my dad got to come to the Playboy Mansion. I actually got to show them around. So that's one thing that I got to do, was give tours of the outside, not inside of the house, but to really show them how unique this property was. You know, what Mr. Hefner created with, you know, all the fortune that he had. He had a private zoo. You know, there was places for the different playmates to stay as well when they're in and out of town with photo shoots. But, you know, like it's a very, very unique environment. But, you know, I was just very, very fortunate to have been there. But I walked away and pursued better options. And, you know, now where I'm at in Hawaii, you know, at the Hilton Hawaiian Village. This is the largest property in the Hilton Corporation.
So if you're ever making a trip out to the islands, look up J.J. Reinhart. You'll find him there. J.J., it's awesome to talk to you.
Pleasure talking
to
with
know
you.
you. We'll be back right after this. Hey, just a reminder, if you want to reach the show with comments, ideas, suggestions, it's easy. Just send us an email at It's Leading Edge, all one word, Leading Edge, one word, at WTOL.com. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, listen, learn, and lead.